rules, limitations on what you can do, least impact and least ability as a landlord, and the fact that their rents are the highest in the country. Just might be a correlation there. Nope, instead we're going to move towards rent control because prices are going up. We'll just cap the rent. Won't that work nicely? If we remember back to the 50s, little history lesson for everyone, that's what made a lot of people lose their property who were the property owners, and they went into little communes, which are still not doing well and still out of price because the supply hasn't changed. Simple as that. But communicating that to our elected officials is what's most important. So another terminology on here, I just want to mention this to you, is source of income. Source of income is often a hidden way to say you should participate and make the government your partner. You should take their lease. Forget the lease that you have. You don't get a right to choose your own lease. You have to take what the government tells you and accept Section 8, housing choice voucher. Now, somebody wants to accept housing choice voucher, that's fine. It's a volunteer program, that's how it was set up. But people have decided, I don't want to participate with the local housing authority because it takes too much time, they're not offering the right amount of money, and guess what? I can't necessarily go after the problem tenant and kick them out when they need to be kicked out. I get handcuffed in all this, and what's their comment? But you get a guaranteed amount. Do I really? Because the housing authorities are oftentimes known, and from what we hear, and as I've relayed to HUD on a variety of different times, not only do they not pay, they make a bigger stink about not paying and being slow pay than my typical resident does. Why would I get in bed with this housing authority if that's the case? So if we're not going to participate with the housing authority, the advocates come in and go, well, you shouldn't consider the source of income. You shouldn't consider that they're using a voucher. Those of us who've used vouchers and participated in these programs, I bought a property that had a resident or two in there and went, not again, right? All these multiple inspections and time and waste and delay and paperwork. No, that's not my right anymore. That's taken away from me. We'll use source of income and make it illegal for you to even consider that aspect of it. So when you hear that phrasing, little flag should go up in your head. Criminal and credit background checks. The HUD case in Texas brought this to a head, and part of it was a disparate impact. Now, everybody knows you cannot just say, and everybody knows, just nod with me on this, you cannot say no felonies. It doesn't work. What you can say is no felonies for the last 10 years on this, or I can say no axe murderers, okay? One that personally hit me, no one who writes bad checks. If you had a felony for a bad check, I don't want you, ever, I don't care. Because literally sitting at the bank, working on one issue of a $1,500 check that somebody did fraud, they get a call from New Orleans, of all places, calling up to Cincinnati saying, hey, is this check any good? We've got another one for $1,500. And manager's going, no, do not accept that. In fact, get a picture of who's trying to cash it right now. So that gave me justification in HUD's eyes to say, I do not want somebody who does fraud. But, and I encourage you, this is Fair Housing Month, so make sure you're following all fair housing laws and all rules, participate in that, but make sure you are working on this issue accurately and appropriately, okay? States and municipalities. There's a number of rules that they're increasing. Difficulty to access those criminal background checks, difficulty to access the civil background checks. Sometimes if you're in, we saw the red states, they'll allow it and the blue city will limit it. So that's just the facts of what we're seeing. Security deposits is another one. This is one where I did an interview with Cavuto on Fox on this. We were talking about a company that comes out and says, here's what we're going to help you with. We want to help you offset security deposits. Well, on the coasts, where it's a $2,500, $3,000, $5,000 deposit, okay, I can see where it might be a point. In our area, it's $250. That's pretty much the going rate for a security deposit. until they passed this law that said if your security deposit is more than 50% of your rent, you have to offer this other option. This other option is this great process. It's this little project, a little program they came out with and said, tell you what, it's Dan, right? Dan, you're gonna rent from me, but you don't have the $250. So you sign up with this program. They run a credit background check on you and go, oh, Dan, for $20 a month, you don't have to pay this $250, the security deposit. So Dan lives here for 2 years, right? Paying $20 a month. Ever done the math with me? You're already ahead. He could have paid the $250 by then. Moves out, and in the meantime, he's damaged the door and some carpet, the basics, right? Does that money cover it? No. All he did was pay to postpone the payment. Isn't that nice? At a time when you're getting ready to go get what? Another security deposit, right? Because you're moving to someplace else. This company is really nice about it. They say, Dan, tell you what, you owe these guys $368. They sent us a bill. You don't even get to see it. You're on the hook for $368, but we'll let you make payments to us at a mere credit card rate. Now, who wants to do that to their residents? Okay? But that's sold in Cincinnati to a councilman who's up for corruption charges right now, by the way. Who pushed it? I'll mention that. That's what happens. This security deposit issue is going around the country, and they're literally advertising and getting people to go out there and telling council members, this is really helpful. It offsets the security deposit and helps people get into rent. No, it doesn't help them. What it does is it ties them down to basically a credit card rate that they're going to keep paying and get further and further in debt. Institutional debt is a problem. Institutional poorhouses are a problem. That's one of the things that we touched on that a little bit in the podcast. Encourage you to listen to it. Ted was being nice. I rambled too much. Sorry. He'll edit it down. You guys will cover some of that. We'll try to get to some of the quick points on it. But a couple things I want to mention to you. Everybody saw infrastructure passage, right? Finally got something done. The bridges are going to be built. You got your bridge built yet? No, nothing. Roads fixed? How's the potholes? Drive down in, come back up, right? Glad I have four-wheel drive. Whew. Build Back Better is being split up into a variety of pieces. I heard today that there was an agreement by the progressives to sign off on Cinnamon and Manchin's requirement on coal, so therefore it may actually move one of the green pieces through. Who knows what it is, because it's not even written to be shared out yet, so we'll see. Voting rights bill. This was a do or die in the House. It is not going anywhere in the Senate. It is not expected to go anywhere at this point. We'll see. An election year, again, back to that logjam. Nobody wants anybody to get a win. So everybody's trying to be real careful not to give the other side a win. So we get stagnation. There's an eviction tracking bill. This is one where we are trying to be careful, and I'll even be careful as I say this. We are not opposing this bill, in part because how many of you have seen the eviction lab or Princeton eviction lab stuff that comes out? And local papers will use and draw their documentation. Well, who here has given a 3-day notice or a 5-day notice or somebody to a resident, right? Somebody's behind on a rent, you give them a notice. As far as Princeton lab, their little eviction lab is concerned, or Princeton University's eviction lab, that's an eviction. I'm like, wait a second. No, I gave them a notice that if they didn't start, now it's the first part of a legal process, but we haven't gotten in court. But that's how they document it. That's how fraudulent the eviction lab at Princeton University is. It is not a peer-reviewed university academy of any sort. It is literally an agenda to drive this eviction issue. So part of what we looked at said, you know what, you're going to do eviction tracking based on what real evictions are? Okay, we won't oppose that because we'll actually have real data out there. And the fact is, majority of those never go anywhere, right? Most people pay up. Sometimes they'll come in, who's had a resident do this? They come in and go, I need you to give me a notice because I can't get help from the local agency until I have that notice to come in, right? Hands? Okay. That is very common. That is not an eviction. Folks, we're working together to try to help them stay in house. Because is it profitable to evict people? Simple answer is no. It's one of the worst parts of the job. You want things to work out. Section 8 reform. This is an interesting one because, folks, what really happens is this. This bill will pop up and around for a couple of years. During that time, HUD will go, I think we can accomplish most of that. They fix it on the regulatory side, and once they've put it in the regulations, then Congress will say, oh, we're just codifying what they're doing, and they'll pass it. So you're not going to see much from us on this because it will continue to churn for a couple of years, and then it will get passed. Seller finance bill is something we've worked on. We've partnered with a seller finance coalition on. How many people have more than 3 units? Do you know you cannot seller finance those within a 12-month period? 3 is the maximum you can do, thanks to Dodd-Frank. So we're working on a laser focus correction in Dodd-Frank bill to make it so you can do more than 3 of, actually selling your own property with your own money and taking on the risk. How's that for an interesting? Welcome to the freedoms of America. Isn't it great? So that's some of the frustration. Some of the other things we're dealing with around the country, we're pushing a YIMBY bill, which means yes in my backyard, allowing for more construction and more development. I don't know if you can see the fine print up here. I also have NIMBYs, bananas, and IGMFUs. What are the, okay. Well, NIMBYs, not in my backyard, of course, right? Bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. Okay? IGMFUs, we know these people. They moved out into an area. They bought 1 acre, but they're in the middle of a nice forested area, whatever, but they don't own it. But now they're saying, I got mine. I'll leave the rest of the FU to figure out your own part. They're called IGMFUs because the simple fact is, I got mine. I don't want anybody else coming out here. I'm not buying the 500 acres around me, but I'll buy the 1 acre and then scream bloody murder to make sure nothing else changes around it. Like, wait a second. It doesn't work that way. Those are part of what we fight on a zoning level issue. All right. Lead paint. Since 1978, the issues of childhood lead poisoning have dropped dramatically every year, consistently. Period. That's the end of the statement. It's dropped every year consistently. Guess what? EPA now wants to come back and change lead laws and make it even more onerous for us. So that's a bill, that's not a bill, that's a regulation that they're coming out with. If you can't get it by bill, then you get it by regulation. So this is what we're seeing is a number of regulations coming out. You notice this is in some ways longer, and what you'll find is it's actually more extensive than the legislation. That's part of the problem. Radon. Right now, if you have a multifamily building you're buying, and there's a basement unit or 2 or 10, you only have to do a percentage of them. They're looking at saying, nope, you have to do every single unit. Like, okay, we just increased the testing. I'm not sure we increased the knowledge. That's part of the concern. And we increased the cost of it. These are 2 issues that we will probably reach out later on. I'll talk about voter voice. One of the issues that we'll reach out to everybody and say, hey, please weigh in on this because we need some help on this. And what they will literally do is go, oh, we had 160,000 responses on this. We need to dig through this issue because we hit a sore spot and a nerve with the populace in general. HUD, DOE, track as you're doing rehabbing, track the energy efficiency, the Energy Star products you're putting in, keep a record of it because there may come some benchmarking. That's what they'd really like. Probably get a half step, and what that means is they want you to share your utility bills or the previous utility bills. I know, the privacy issue here. The previous utility bills or what the average utility bill is for a unit so that they know that if it's a expensive or inexpensive unit. That's part of where we're going in this. That's part of the climate change effort. There's a new climate change czar at HUD, and it was a very odd call when she shared with who she was, what she was doing, and she was so excited she was going to the next climate change summit. So it's all interesting. I have to say it that way. It's interesting. We're recorded. So increased fair housing investigations. Please, again, this is Fair Housing Month. Please do things correctly. Nobody should be deprived of housing based on their race, gender, sex, color, orientation, religious, or political beliefs, right? Criminal, oh yeah. If you're a dirtbag that doesn't pay the bills, oh yeah. But not because of those issues. That's part of what makes us America and a great country. So with that in mind, there is increased investigation on this. So please, make sure you're being up to speed and make sure you are, if you haven't done training on fair housing, I'd encourage you to do it. Ted, it might be somebody to bring in as the local fair housing person. It's one of the ones we encourage to do. Second homes, see if this rings a bell for you guys. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, we're not going to focus on all these second homes. We want to make sure people have an opportunity to buy their first home, and we're going to really subsidize that, and we're going to lower the cost. We're going to make sure the application is easy so that there is a ability for people who don't have a house to buy a house. In 2005 and 2006, we called those ninja loans. No income, no job. Okay? Where did that get us in 8 and 9 and 10, 11 and 12 and still dragging on a legacy? That's part of what was just put in place earlier this year. So hang on, folks. Things are gearing up. Affirmatively furthering fair housing. This is literally the federalization of zoning. Because if DC does not like the way zoning is done in your community, they then get to come in and say, you're not doing it correctly. Do you want to change, or shall we just take it over for you? Yeah, that's been a testy issue. And I'm not even getting into National Labor Relations, OSHA, some of the other ones. We've got a lot to deal with on the regulatory side, so that's one area where, folks, if you see an email coming out from us, please participate in this, because we need local voices participating and sharing with them, this is why this impacts us this way, or this is the problem with it. So, share with you, I took a picture of my dog Monday morning before I left. This is Coco. This is Ziva, our cat. She likes to get outside and pretend she's the lion standing there next to our statue in the garden. And I share that to say, I love pets. I love my dog, I love my cat, right? The cat acts like a dog. It was a kitten raised by a dog, so it thinks it's a dog. So yeah, it plays fetch, and I can show you videos of it attacking the dog, running back and forth, playing. It's fun, right? But is that necessarily a service dog? So that's Coco when she was a puppy, and I was making the case to HUD that it's $21.80 for that on Amazon. They will ship it to you in 2 days. No questions asked. You can put it on there, and guess what? I really felt guilty doing this, but I had to try it. I went out to some stores, and they all went, and nobody would say a word, because it says service dog in training on the side of that. Now, she's really a therapy dog. Once she got past some of the puppy stage, I take her to senior citizen homes and we visit and folks and all that. I'm active in my church, that's part of what we do. That is far cry from being a service dog. Justice Department had a law, had the rules on what a service dog is, what a service animal is. HUD, in their process of fixing it, added 17 pages of confusion to this issue of, sorry, can't call them a pet. That's a $5,000 violation right there off the bat. That's why I said make sure you're up on your fair housing laws. Those companion animals. Because anybody should be able to have their companion animal with them, including the lady who had a potbelly pig that she got a note, that's all it takes, literally a note from your yoga instructor written on a napkin is legitimate, according to HUD. But the sad part was when she would leave, her potbelly pig would get so depressed that her potbelly pig needed 2 ducks. I kid you not, I cannot make this stuff up. So potbelly pig and 2 ducks. And the 2 ducks are the prescription for the depression that the potbelly pig gets into. And you have to accept it. So needless to say, this is one of the issues that we're struggling with. And again, I use my own dog to say, $21.80, that's all it takes, and I can get it. Now, I will tell you this. One of the things that we had, the Solicitor General at HUD, we were talking about this, and he goes, well, I have to share this with you, Charles. Not publicly, but I was working on this issue, and there's all these websites out there. And I said, yeah, there's fraud. And he said, I had so many website pop-ups, it shut my laptop down. I had to send it down to IT, and I was without my laptop for almost 2 weeks. I'm thinking, first of all, okay, that's only the government, you'd lose your laptop for 2 weeks to get IT to fix it. Close the pop-ups, first of all, but you know, he's an attorney, what do you expect? Sorry, guys. But I'm like, if you realize that's the depth of the problem, that's the depth of the fraud that we're dealing with, and I will tell you, those fraud websites out there are not just on animals anymore. They will be, make sure you're paying attention to any receipts you get, or if you get something that says, I worked at such and such place. Those are also fraudulent. There's websites out there that provide those for $6.95. Not $695, $6.95. You can get a nice little format and it says, here's who the business was and they worked there on these days. Now the blessed part, kind of like the FBI says, thank you for stupid criminals, most of these people don't add correctly in the first place, so you can actually figure out that they did it wrong just by doing the math, because they will actually make less money the second time than they did the first time. Like, seriously? You're out. Thank you for applying. So just know that that's out there going on. So I mentioned the HR 5013. This is a change to Dodd-Frank. If you go to National REIA's website, we have this out there on the Action Center. This is part of one of the pushes that we're pushing for, one of the changes we want. I encourage people to go here, reach out. All it takes is you get on there. There's actually a little video on there, even how to do it. You put in your name and address, and what it does, it says your address means you relate to this congressman or you're in their district, and then it emails directly to them. It doesn't get firewalled off. It doesn't go over to Kansas where it sits in mail for 2 weeks and gets radiated and all stuck together. It goes directly into their offices and they actually see that. So we encourage you to do that. It's asking for co-sponsorship on HR 5013. So there's full explanation on there, but I encourage you to do that. You can do it while you're sitting here, pull up a phone, take a look at it. The other one is Bill Track 50, and we provide this as a resource for all chapters across the country. And this is a tracking service so that you can find out what bills are going on in your state. You can hop on there, look at it, and it will tell you we've got about 7 different categories that we track, whether it's rehabbing, rental licenses, inspections. Those are the kinds of things you can look at, and we can work with you on that. I mentioned Ted will probably work on something, getting a widget on there for you, and just to be able to track and see what's going on in my community. What do I need to reach out to state legislators on? So with that, I want to come down to this last issue. I'm going to grab a drink of water here real quick. So one of the things that we've found is typically I talk about legislative issues. And recently I've been asked more and more to do something on the monetary policies because, let's face it, folks, things are getting rather interesting right now. I like Sun Tzu's Art of War, loot a burning house, fish in troubled water. There's things like that. The question is how troubled is the water? That's part of what we're looking at right now. And I think everybody kind of has an idea. There's some concerns going on. How concerned should we be? And I know in 2008 and 2009, we had members that said, well, I knew things were bad, but I went ahead and bought this next house. I did this. And they did this after things turned bad. Okay? We're not there yet. Okay? So that's what I'm saying, balance. But I want you to think about in terms of making sure you're prepared, one, So if there is a downturn, you've got opportunity to purchase. But two, that you don't get hung out to dry. That's what we're trying to make sure our members don't get hung out to dry. So that's part of what we're communicating, talking with our economists, like I said, with Chris, and making sure we're trying to share the best information possible with you on what's going on. So you have a pulse on the economy, and as things start to change for good or for bad, whether it's demographically changing, less housing demand by 2025, or the fact that inflation rates now, Powell said today, I think he's going to go at least a half point. Originally it was a quarter point. Well, maybe we'll do a half. Now it's definitely a half. We may consider more. Okay, how much is it? And part of, if you listen to what the Fed is saying internally, they're looking at, well, interest has to surpass inflation. What was inflation last month? 7.9%. Okay. Mortgages today for a 30-year mortgage are about what, 4.7, 4.9, okay, and climbing. Now, they've only gone up a quarter point at the Fed, but you see where things are starting to go. Now, anybody here had their water rates go down, their energy rates go down? Anybody able to have their gas go down to put in their car? I just want to know where you're shopping at, because right. None of us have had that. What we're seeing, and by the way, the interesting thing with the government numbers that are coming out for you, food. Anybody here buy food? Okay. Anybody here buy gas, electric, natural gas? Yeah, that doesn't count towards inflation rate. Think about that. That inflation rate that they're putting out there does not include those numbers, because those are commodities, and they're too unstable. Excuse me, that's what I buy the most of on a regular basis typically, right? Now, one of the concerns is, we can jump down to Russia for a minute. Russia is a commodity state. That's one of the main things they come out with. They've stabilized themselves as a commodity state. Do they have manufacturing? Very limited amounts. But they provide commodities. Ukraine provides 14% of the wheat for the world. Now, in the U.S., if things go up, what do? Grumble and buy it, right? Parts of the world, they can't do that. Instability in Africa, which is one of the main purchasers of wheat from Ukraine, so you're looking at massive instability, because as I explained to my daughter, we were talking about this, and she said, Dad, why does that mean there's instability? I said, because if I'm hungry, it's one thing. When I have to look into my children's eyes who are starving, something's going to change. Something's going to give. Okay? That's what we're looking for, as a cascade effect. Does it happen tomorrow? No. Is it going to happen over the next several months? Yes, it is. Okay? Want you guys to be aware, because that happens in Africa doesn't mean something's going to happen here. Not necessarily. However, South America is also unstable. Now, one of the benefits is South America typically is more corn-based than wheat-based. But what do you think happens when the wheat's gone? Do you think the corn prices are going to go up? Okay. Do we see the trade-offs? Now, how many Central American countries and South American countries are perfectly stable? Yeah, after I'll just leave it at that. That's part of the concern, because what happens at our southern border next? Now, in one sense, I don't blame them. If I'm looking at my kids and they're starving, am I going to do something about it? Yeah, whatever I can. So bear in mind, that's part of what the rest of the world is looking at right now. That's what the leadership around the world is looking at, going, we got a problem. Even if Russia pulls out of Ukraine right now, the mines that they left behind are immediately removed. Ukraine has until the end of April to get their planting in. Do you think that's going to happen? Okay. That's a huge amount of food that's not going to come into the world. There's also coal, there's also oil. Those commodities are going to have an impact. So I'm telling you that, just, word to the wise, be prepared on something like that. Where that goes, we don't know yet. I had our chief economist on, and we were discussing it, and his actual PhD is in the USSR, is on the USSR. He actually spent time in Leningrad, and fascinating discussion, and he's like, we don't know where this is going. And especially with this administration, we don't know where it's going because they haven't even shared where they're going. Usually you get an administration, if you get a couple years under your belt, you can start making better decisions. They're still getting people who are green in there, I don't mean green environmental, I mean green as in new to this, and they're still getting their people in office. That is a tough thing to do, whether you're at the State Department or at the White House, if you don't have people in there, especially a little bit seasoned, to know how to respond to things like this. And China, North Korea, and Iran, all three of which are attacking us cyber-wise, so is Russia. Because of that, there's going to be things going on. We send out these little notices, by the way, that say, please make sure your computers are backed up. Please make sure you take the time to do those kind of things. I'm encouraging you right now, please make sure to make your computers are backed up, make sure you've got extra virus protection on there. Everybody knows what phishing is, and I don't mean, right? It is going to get much worse. So please be aware of that and be cyber aware, okay? With that, I'm gonna kind of jump to some questions, and if you guys have questions on things, thoughts, what I've said tonight? Was that too much to drop on you?
I got a question for you. There's a gentleman I've been talking to, Paul Volchek, in town, and we talked a little bit about the regulations on wholesalers. This led into conversations, when you and I talked about this one-on-one, but of potential rent control coming down the pipeline for this area and some backers behind it, and also maybe regulatory on short-term rentals. Do you have any feedback or things that you've been seeing around the country on this, and some advice you give us to kind of fight for our rights?
So FHA, 10 years ago even, said, well, we want to make sure that homeowners have the first right of opportunity to purchase property. And so they said, investors, you can't buy. You can't buy for the first 6 months. And what happened was they found out from municipalities that what that meant was some of these properties sat there for an additional 6 months because no homeowner was going to buy this because of the amount of work that had to be done on it. Okay? How many sell to millennials, single families? Okay? Do they want to fix anything up, or do they want everything done? Okay? How many millennials know how to do more than swing a hammer and actually hit the nail? Okay? Most of them do not, okay? We know that. And millennials among your peers, you know that they don't. So what we've been able to do is talk to them and say, look, and it was down to, I think we had it down to 14 days. They just took it up to a month again. Again, there's a mentality difference that, well, you're trying to make a profit on this, therefore you must be wrong. Again, where do we go wrong in our country that capital and profit is a bad thing? It's not. That's what makes this world better, because you're going to work harder to improve it and provide a value. If you're not going to make any money at it, are you going to do it? So it doesn't get done, which is exactly what they found out, which is exactly what I'm leading to with the wholesaling piece, is talking with municipalities, talking with legislators to say, this is the problem. All you're doing is giving a month where nothing's going to happen. This property is going to sit for another month, not fixed up. Oh, and by the way, municipality, that means it's not going to be on your tax rolls. It's not going to be generating funds, not somebody living there for at least another month. Those are the kinds of things we want to bring. Now, one of the things I will say, Midwest common sense typically looks at some level of supply and demand and says, we need more housing, not less, in order to lower the cost of housing. Rent control, at least in most of the Midwest, outside of Chicago, and I mean that, because the rest of Illinois is like, what are they thinking? I mean, literally. But most of us look at it and go, yeah, rent control is not how you fix things. On the coast, something about the salt water. It must be the salt water. It just affects the brain or whatever, and they do this. So, but here's the thing, and I always say it this way, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. Legislatively speaking, if you're not there, you're not on radar, you're not speaking up, you're not showing up, and that doesn't mean you have to be at every meeting, but you've got to get involved with your local council members, your mayors, state reps. Introduce yourself. And the best way to do it, honestly, is at the gas station, at the, the Remke Mart, the IGA, the Meijer, the Kroger, when you're at the grocery store and you see them, hey, Representative Dan, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm one of your constituents. I'm a neighbor, actually. I live just down. Oh, really? Great. Let me give you my card. Because what Representative Dan's going to do is go, you're a small business owner. You probably impact at least 10 other voters. Between employees, family, the fact that you're talking with other businesses, that's huge. So bear that in mind, and that's the kind of thing you want to make sure you're introducing yourself, become a resource for them. That's part of what we talked about earlier today, and that's how you're going to address these kind of issues, bringing just straightforward, common sense, professional resources to the legislators. Most of them have information flying at them left and right. We sat down with Senator McConnell, and he's old, right? We can agree with that? He's old. Right before COVID hit, I was up there, and we stood up and went, he's like, come on, let's do a picture. So we did this picture, and he starts kind of doing this. And I'm like, yeah, he's speaker at that point, or it's president of the Senate. I'm like, I don't, okay. But what's up here is sharp as can be. And literally, we're asking questions, we're talking to him, and he's firing questions back like this. At one point, he looks over to staff, and they without missing a heartbeat, they said, that's Bill's, that's Senator so-and-so's bill, such and such. And looked right back at us and kept going. That's what's going on with most of these legislators. Their staff is good and effective. Please don't overlook them. Be kind to the staff, because the staff are usually involved because they want to get involved in politics, not stuck there. They want to be there. They're usually very qualified at what they do. Talk to them, become a resource for them, because you make them look good when they have answers for the boss, especially when they can get quick answers and they can call you up, hey, I got a title issue. How does this work? Oh, here it is. Oh, thanks. You think you're a resource? Do you think your words are getting into that congressman's ear or that state rep's ear? That's what's important.
I got another question if somebody else doesn't. Obviously, I think we have a very active group here, but I just feel like the group isn't taking full advantage of all the benefits that National REIA has. And is there like a piece of advice you could give to our members to take more advantage of the national benefits and not just the local benefits that we provide?
Stay plugged in. I encourage you to invite Karen out. She's one of our counterparts, and she can give you kind of rundown not only of Home Depot benefits, but Office Depot, 30% off your printing. Are you doing printing of any kind? 30% off is a nice chunk. Equity, who needs to raise funds? Sorry guys, there's other options out there too. If you want to put your own self-directed IRA out there and invest with each other, faster way of going than saying, hey, let me put it in the stock market and sit. We have at least a dozen other companies, and what we do is go in, and did I not just say this to you guys a few minutes ago? A few minutes ago? How long was I rambling? Sorry. A little bit ago, that, what benefits can you bring to the members? That's what we're looking for. So I encourage you to get on our website for National REIA, go through Omaha REIA, by all means, find out what's there, utilize it, register with the programs, you will start seeing benefits. And that's really what we want to do, is make sure that you're getting more benefit than it costs for membership. That's the real goal of it, folks.
So on that last piece of information that you have there, so you talk about inflation and certain information you guys are gathering as an organization. I think we can all agree that there is a lot of information out there, but most of it we can't really trust because it's just to get likes on YouTube or just get some followers. So I think the information that you guys have is very valuable, and I would really like to hear a little bit more on your opinion. Not because we can't find it on our phone, but we don't really trust it. So, and the other thing will be, where can we find it? We can go online and look at it.
So on National REIA's website, we do have some of our recent publications, and we keep all of them up there. I encourage you to check those out. Keep your fingers on the pulse of as many of those different sources as you can. And I don't mean, the tinfoil wearing whatever hat somewhere off on the internet, because anybody can write anything, right? Look for good sources. We deal there's a number of different reporters, I won't name names, at Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg and stuff, that they range from fairly accurate to I have an agenda and I'm going to run an agenda. So we try to sort some of that out. If you look at real estate investing today, realestateinvestingtoday.org or .com, that's one of our news aggregation sites, and we try to pull together information there for people, and it may have a legislative focus, it may have a finance focus, but that's one of the areas we try to do kind of news aggregation, so you don't have to go out and search 500 different websites. We're trying to pull those together for you. So again, I should have that up there, but Real Estate Investing Today.
Just so you guys know too, if you guys are part of the Facebook groups, if you're a member and you join REIA members only, I post and share every single article that they have, either on the members only page or our open
Excellent.
Public page. So we do actively share that, and those articles are available for you there too, as another source to find them. Questions?
Do you think any other governments will think the U.S. should lose its world reserve currency status, and perhaps they deserve to?
That is a huge question right now and hotly debated. If Russia had been successful in a 72-hour takeover of Ukraine, you would have seen most likely China take Taiwan very quickly. You would have seen Iran fire off a number of missiles at a variety of their neighbors, and things break down. Afghanistan was a watershed moment, or the failures in Afghanistan were a watershed moment. We will be feeling that for years. That is part of what gave Russia the impetus to go, the West isn't going to do anything. Right now, what's flowing into Ukraine makes what happened with the Mujahideen look like toys. I mean, they Stinger missiles, and there's a British missile, I can't even think what the name of it is, that they are flowing in by the caseload, by the truckload, and just coming in cases by cases. And that's just some of the more high-tech stuff, let alone low-tech stuff that's coming in. That's part of what's going on. There was even some thought that there might be discussion to do that very thing, change how the petrodollar is concerned, which is why India sat back initially and said, well, we're going to see where this goes, because they could benefit tremendously. India's been our partner, and for how long? For them to sit back, for Saudi Arabia to go, yeah, we'll answer your phone later. That's a huge loss of face around the world. And loss of face is more than just, well, you just lost it, but that doesn't mean anything. No, it's huge. When you're talking diplomacy, that is a huge thing. Where this finally breaks down, we don't know. The fact that France and England told Germany, you need to build a military. Think about that. Okay, something about world history? I don't know. And Germany went, oh my word, we need to. Because let me tell you, the Germans and the Russians do not like each other. And the difference right there is Poland right now, who's sitting in the middle again. Poland is helping Ukraine because who's on their front door if they don't? Okay? That's where we're at. If we lose the reserve currency of the world, which literally means our currency is no longer bought by everybody else to purchase things in the first place, you're looking at it, the estimate is a 20% reduction in our lifestyle. Now, what does that mean? Think about everything costing at least 25% more across the board. And your diplomatic influence dramatically reduced. Now, the fact that the ruble has summarily crashed, Russia is upholding it because of the gold standard, or the gold that they have reserved, and China is the other one. The last I heard, they have somewhere around 20 to 25 tons that they've been purchasing since about 2008. They're trying to stabilize their economy because they were getting ready to do the same thing. And now she is over there going, we're going to watch this. But China is also in a position, this is not really talked about because we talk about China and Russia versus the US, but China can sit back and go, okay, yeah, you two slog it out a little bit. Who's left standing? Okay? That's part of where all this is going to. Now, one of the pieces that's been around the world is you still have the European Central Bank, you have Japan, and even South America where it's negative interest rates. Where can you get positive interest rates? Are they really small? Well, they're growing here. So the money has been flowing here since about December of 2016 when the Fed raised our interest rate a little bit. And then, of course, we dropped it back with COVID. But it's still seen as the most stable country in the world, so therefore capital floods to it. How much of a bubble does that put us in? That's an unknown. And if we lose that reserve, do we lose more than 20% because there is such an influx? The question is where are you going to take the money to? Are you going to take it to Russia? Oh, you had businesses in Russia. Thank you, they're ours now. China, you going to invest in China? If you're not Chinese communist dictators or leaders, you better not be investing there because you're going to lose it, including all of your intellectual property. India? Maybe. What's their economy? The size of New Jersey? Okay. That's part of where we're at. We're still sitting in a good position, but we might be, what's the phrase, an actress who's traded out and gone out on her looks too much. We might be in that position. That's part of what the economists are looking at.
So the supply chain is not going to be changing anytime soon is kind of what I'm getting out of this. So new construction is not going to be kicking up anytime soon.
So actually, Ted and I were talking about this beforehand. Everybody's familiar with just-in-case ordering and inventory, right? How about just-in-time ordering, right? You order, make sure it's very efficient. Things are moving to just-in-case, okay? Office space, a ton of office space available. COVID changed how we're doing housing and office and all of that. If you're rehabbing right now, you better be putting in office space, right? Or some space where somebody can do office from their home. If you're not, you're missing the boat. I don't care if it's a one bedroom or whatever, you better have some space in there for it. Part of that though is that just in case inventory needs a lot more office warehouse spaces. Not office warehouse. Because they've got to have some place to store it. It might be 5,000, might be 500,000, but you're going to have a lot more of those type of properties and converting those. That's what's in highest demand right now and most likely will be for the next several years because everybody's trying to build some resiliency so that if something shuts down or if there's a next wave or whatever, there's some, okay, we can breathe, we've got enough supply. And because what's happening to businesses, they go to their vendors and say, do you have this in supply? Do you have this to cover me? So that's kind of where we've been at.
I think I just heard a golden nugget. So we just dropped a golden nugget. Put office space in your rehabs and in your rental properties. That's my mind is already turning.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Please don't be shy. Charles traveled a long way, so he's here to answer questions. Yeah, Dan.
Actually, I don't even have a question, but what I want to say is being a father of three, one of the biggest fears I have is raising kids that are like disrespectful, embrace like a victim mentality. So just the fact that, from what I gather from what you've said tonight, it's refreshing to hear people in like leadership positions that really advocate for personal accountability and responsibility. So just a comment. It's refreshing to hear.
Thank you. Remember that. All right.
I think we'll conclude, and you'll hang out with us for a little bit tonight?
Absolutely. Happy to.
Okay, right. So big round of applause for Charles Tassell, guys. Thank you.
Get
a little bit out there, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Lots of information, lots of takeaways there. So I'm definitely going to have to re-listen to that probably 2 or 3 times just to take it all in.